am Anna Seewald, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. I'm a parent educator, and my mission is to help children by helping parents. The motto of this podcast is raising our children, growing ourselves. Today, understanding attachment. How much do our childhoods, especially the quality of our first loving bonds, determine who we become and how we love? A truly fascinating and delightful conversation about the science of attachment with a longtime Zen student and author of a phenomenal book, Strange Situation, A Mother's Journey into the Science of Attachment, Bethany Saltman. Bethany is a writer, an award-winning editor, coach to visionaries, best-selling authors, and entrepreneurs. Her work can be seen in magazines like the New York Times, New York Magazine, Atlantic Monthly, Parents, and many others. Strange Situation is her first book, and it was named one of the best science books of 2020 by New Scientist. It is inspired by the birth of her daughter in 2006. She loved her dearly, but felt as if something was missing. Looking back at her lonely childhood, dangerous teen years, and love-addicted early adulthood, Bethany thought maybe she was broken. Then she discovered the science of attachment, the field of psychology that explores the question of why, from an evolutionary point of view, love exists between parents and children. And attachment science is not attachment parenting, by the way. Bethany went on a 10-year journey, visiting labs, archives, and training sessions, while learning the meaning of delight from Mary Ainsworth, one of the psychologist's most important but unsung researchers who died in 1999. So it took her 10 years to complete this book, which is truly a masterpiece. A part memoir, a part science book. It's brilliant, brutally honest, and powerful. The foreword of the book is written by Dr. Dan Siegel. Bethany went deep into the history and findings from Ainsworth's famous laboratory procedure, the Strange Situation, which is still used by the scientists around the world to catch a glimpse of the internal workings of attachment. If you're not familiar with the Strange Situation experiment, there are many videos on YouTube. I highly encourage you to watch them even before listening to this episode. The Strange Situation is a 20-minute procedure in which a caregiver-child bond is studied through a series of comings and goings. Through the science of attachment, what Bethany discovered was a radical departure from everything she thought she knew about love and about her own family, her story, and herself. That she was far from broken. She saw that love is too powerful to ever break. In this conversation, we make several references to things that might not be familiar to you. The first one being a movie called The Lost Daughter on Netflix. It's a psychological drama based on a novel by the same name. It's about a middle-aged college professor who is on a solo vacation in Greece and develops an obsession with the young mother on the beach and her little daughter, which promotes memories of her early motherhood. Bethany's story reminded me of this movie. I have recommended this movie to the subscribers of my mailing list, so if you receive my weekly newsletter, you have most likely heard about it. I mentioned it a few times, as it really had a big impact on me, and as it turned out, on Bethany too. I hope by talking about the movie in this episode, we didn't spoil it for you. Before we get to today's conversation, may I recommend a few past episodes that are relevant to today's topic. Episode 315, How to Help Kids with Emotional Self-Regulation with Dr. Mona Delahooke. Episode 267, The Power of Discord with Drs. Ed Tronick and Claudia Gold. Episode 260, Parenting with Presence with Dr. Dan Siegel. And episode 189, What's Your Attachment Style with Dr. Jenny Rosier. Attachment is a fascinating topic for me. And if you're like me and are fascinated with the science of attachment, there is another great book that I have read in the past that I briefly mentioned in this episode, but I want to mention it in this intro as well. It's called Becoming Attached, First Relationships and How They Shape Our Capacity to Love by Dr. Robert Karen. It's a phenomenal book, an in-depth exploration of the history and science of attachment. With that, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Bethany Saltman and find value in it. Well, Bethany, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I am very excited to speak with you. I have to say that I read your book after I watched the Lost Daughter film.
My gosh. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Not on purpose. Your book was on my to-read list for a long time. And obviously, I don't have a lot of time. I read for the podcast a lot. But I had watched the movie and then I read the book. I'm like, this is perfect. So I want to talk about the movie a little bit too, because it goes very well with your, and I know you watched the movie too. You had on Instagram engagement about this. A lot, right? So,
yep. I've done a podcast about it. It's been a big part of my life for the past couple of months.
Oh my gosh. So what did you find about the movie? What was resonant for you in the movie? I think we can all relate to it as moms. Don't you think?
Not everybody.
No?
Certainly
not everybody?
No. Many women, many mothers felt that Leda was cruel. They didn't relate to her. So I related to her, but I would certainly not say that everybody did.
Okay. Well, I completely didn't relate to her. I did relate to her, but not entirely, obviously.
Sure.
I didn't neglect my daughter or anything, but I could resonate with the feelings that she was going through while trying to preserve her own selfhood and doing this mothering job.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I have never seen and I'm a big movie person. I've been working on a script. Strange Situation there's been conversation about it being adapted into a film. And so that's really exciting. Nothing has happened yet. Hollywood is ridiculously slow and strange. But so I've been going deep into that world, and I have never felt so seen by a film, and I've never related to a character so much as I did. And so many people, and I take this as a huge compliment, told me that they were reminded of me when they watched young Leda, who is, this really passionate young woman. And so it feels I feel really connected to the film and to the book, by the way, which is a wonderful book. So what is it about it? It's about, again, I haven't done some of the things Leda has done. I wouldn't do some of the things that Leda has done as a young mother and an older mother. So it's really not about that. And I'm not here to put some kind of a marker around who's good and who's bad and who's right and who's wrong. It's irrelevant. It's really about, she was struggling mightily to feel like a person in the world. And this is some of the things that we talked about. I did a podcast with Kimberly Johnson, who's a wonderful author of the book called Wild, and a book about early motherhood. I'm forgetting the name right now.
The fourth trimester.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. And she has an incredible Instagram account, and she's a dear friend of mine. And we did a podcast about it. And to me, this personhood is not just at risk when you become a mother. This is a problem for all human beings. How do you become a person? And the impulse to depersonify us in this very violent world, and I'm not talking just about physical violence, but just, the violence of patriarchy, the violence of capitalism, the violence of white supremacy, the violence of duality, the violence of the world that we live in that doesn't honor complex experience. When we live in that world, we are always at the mercy of these very divisive forces. And anybody who's sort of awake to that is in a process of trying to become whole. And the way that Leda did that in The Lost Daughter was such that I have never seen, I had never seen anybody trying to become a person in the same ways that I try to become a person. Through her intellect, through her motherhood, through her passion, through sexuality, through beauty. I mean, she was just so stunning, and through relationship, through just all the things that she did. I do those things too, and I am good at some of them, and I suck at some of them, and that's my world. And so. Yeah, so that's why the movie was so powerful to me. And I just thought it was a brilliant screenplay and a brilliant film in so many ways that have nothing to do with, what we're talking about right now. But yeah, so what did you think?
I enjoyed the movie very much. I think it was very artfully done. I call this the dark side of motherhood. It was portrayed very well in the movie, what a lot of mothers go through. Like, she was trying to, like you said, find herself, while also being this mom, this woman. And I really enjoyed the movie and the way they did it, how, I don't want to take the whole time talking about this movie, but so much I can talk about, about the doll, about her relationship with Nina and her own things, how it ends. Everything about this movie is fantastic. And it's impactful. It's very impactful. You think about the movie afterward. Yeah. It's multi-layered, it's complex. It's phenomenal. And I really enjoyed it. And I did connect with her in some levels. I could totally understand her and the other characters. It's very deep, very profound, and very artfully done. And I've never seen anything like it in a very, very long time. One of my favorite movies of all time is Call Me by My Name. Call Me by Your Name. Have you seen that movie?
What is it again?
Call Me by Your Name is about first love. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it. First of all, the music, the soundtrack is stunning. The acting is, again, phenomenal.
Is it about boys? Is it about?
It's about a boy who is a teenager and falls in love with another man.
Yes, of course. Yes. No, that's an incredible movie.
It's a fantastic movie, but there is a scene in that movie where there's a monologue by the father who talks to the son. And that monologue is very powerful.
I think Lost Daughter is a better film.
It's so I can compare these two films. For me, they were both impactful. That's what I'm saying. The Lost Daughter is phenomenal. So I watched the film and then I read your book. It's like, wow. So I'm in this interesting universe, and I'm like, I have to talk to this woman, Bethany.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. You don't know how happy that makes me to know that you paired me with The Lost Daughter. So that is just the best thing ever. Thank you.
So I also pair you with Mary Ainsworth. I think you look like her just a little bit. Call me crazy, but the way you wear your hair and all, don't you think so?
I love that. I not exactly, but I'll take it. I'll take it. She was lovely.
Okay. So what I want to know, who was Bethany before she became a mom? Describe Bethany to me. I want to know who you were before you became a mom.
Oh my goodness. Well, I wasn't that different. I've always been super committed to the truth, to my truth, first and foremost, relentlessly. People in my life will tell you. Complicated, very much devoted to the feelings and practice of love, seeing the world through the lens of beauty, poetry, and that sort of like that gaze of what, a very contemplative, I've always been a very religious person, you could say, very much looking for the truth of the matter, for the meaning in things, and noticing beauty. I'm seeing beauty. And when I don't see beauty and when I don't feel beauty, devoted to uncovering what's in the way.
Your book is so phenomenal, masterful. I love how and there is a twist, there is a mystery. I mean, it has everything, and it reads very well. And this year I have read so many books, and a lot of them are so well written. I'm like, are books getting better, or I'm just reading good books? But I love how you juxtapose your story, obviously, to uncover the science, and you use yourself and communicate that. But I love how it's one chapter is the science, the next is your life. It's how we go toggle between these two realms.
Back and
forthing. Yes, it's almost as if you're replicating this strange situation, because it's about separation and union. We first separate from your story, we go to the science, then we come back again, and it felt very comforting, and it's very beautiful and poetic. I highly recommend anyone who is listening to read to this wonderful book. But I would love for you to speak about your early motherhood and how was it for you? You talk openly. Just describe to me the reality of motherhood compared to what you expect it to be.
Oh my goodness. Whew. Wow. It was thrilling. I teach, I help people write books, and build brands and businesses and all this stuff. And I always talk about dynamic tension. That like dynamic tension is what sells. Dynamic tension is what you're always seeking, and boy, early motherhood is dynamic tension because it was profoundly thrilling and kind of shattering in all those good ways. Like nothing was the same. And yet there was no soundtrack. There was nothing that was sort of like holding me in a space of, it was of like transcendence, because it was so freaking ordinary and moment to moment that it was very difficult for me to kind of hold both of those realities, that like awe-inspiring, holy, just transformation and gift that this person was. I mean, I, could easily start crying here, like this human being who I love more than life itself. She's, 16. She just texted me. She forgot something, and, I have to take it to school for her. And the love I have for her is so just mind-boggling. And the day-to-day of staring into an infant's face and not having anything to do, I didn't know how to feel that like energy that I feel in my life when I was just with an infant. Now, I will say right now that since I have written my book, I've met Janet Lansbury, who has an incredible podcast called Unruffled. And if I had met her when I was that young mother, I think things would be really different for me because she has a way.
Yeah.
Well, because she talks about Magda Gerber and the RIE method, and she talks about learning it's really good for people just like me who have so much intellectual and sort of emotional energy. And when you're face to face with an infant who doesn't really do anything, and you're supposed to be loving them, and you don't know what that looks like or what it feels like or what it is, and it's so kind of dreadfully boring, but you feel bad for feeling bored. And I mean, it's just so big. And she talks about sort of gathering up some of that energy and with curiosity. And because the RIE method is, and it's the only method in the whole wide world that I would ever talk about in these exalted terms, because I don't like methods of any kind. But Magda Gerber and Janet Lansbury have really helped so many parents learn how to trust their infant and have a relationship with their infant in a way that I know how to do that, but I didn't know how to do that with her in that way at that time. So it was very jolting for me because I'm a relator. I mean, I just relate to people, I relate to things, I relate to my sensations. I'm a sensation person. And I didn't know how to do that with this teeny tiny baby. And I felt interrupted all the time. And I felt like I didn't know how to stay in my zone when I needed to be taking care of her zone. And again, the RIE method, the Magda Gerber, Janet Lansbury, that's the one thing. If I could go back and change one thing in my whole entire life, it would be that I had more resource in learning how to see my daughter in that beautiful, beautiful, gentle way. That would have really, I think, helped me. So, early motherhood was, of course, I look back at it now with so much melancholy. It was such a wonderful, beautiful time. Very difficult, very, very difficult.
It's emotionally very difficult, even if you are the most emotionally flexible, intelligent, adoptive person. I think it's just the sameness of it, being alone with the baby, doing it over and over, the boredom of it, the relentlessness, the giving aspect, the constant giving and not getting much from it. And it's just mind-boggling. You can be alone and it's very hard. I think people don't talk about that a lot. And I call that the dark side of motherhood. For me, it was difficult too, the beginning of motherhood. But, and you had postpartum depression. I mean, I can't imagine even having that.
Yeah.
And we don't have support, right? We don't have a community of women, moms, sisters, or aunts who can come and chip in and cook for us or rub our feet or pick up the baby. It's like you're doing this alone, this emotionally draining job. You don't sleep. It's like, it's very hard. And so in the movie, in the Lost Daughter movie, when the child has a boo-boo on her finger or something, and the mother is like attaching a Band-Aid and she's doing attending to her daughter, and the daughter goes, "Mommy, kiss it." And it's like your heart breaks when you see it, but that's all she could do in that moment, right? Like you reach your limit, it's endless. So when was it for you that you gained some kind of insight into what you just described about Lansbury and the RIE method? Like, was there a turning point for you that you changed? No,
that was, I just met Janet when my book came out and she had me on her podcast.
Oh, so you parented like this, basically your daughter with those kind of feelings? Was there a time in your parenthood when your daughter was young that you changed your outlook, or
Oh, sure, sure, sure,
Yeah,
sure,
that's
sure. Yes,
that's
yes.
what I mean. Yeah. Not
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, just to be clear, I'm bringing up Janet just because her work is so phenomenal, and I wish that I'd had that as a young mother. So, yes, early motherhood was very difficult, but I also had tremendous joy, and I loved her, and we had a wonderful life together and did a lot of wonderful things. And as she got older, it got a lot easier for me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a relator. So I really, as she got older and I could relate to her more. And the baby thing was really tough for me because luckily Azalea became verbal at like 10 months. And so we could talk. That was helpful for me. And so then, like the things just got like the stretches became bigger, like things would get hard, but there was more space in between. And, I still had my own stuff to manage, like my temper and all of my own passions and, the difficulty of just being me. So that was always the case. And that's still the case. And, something that I'm just working on and, I'm a work in progress. And I don't say that in a cavalier way, but like I'm working deeply and hard all the time, continually today on, being the best, most kind, compassionate, connected person I can be for the world. And so that is a process that was continuing to grow, that I was continuing to grow within as Azalea was getting older. Now she's 16. And, we get along well and we have stuff and, but, I'm really devoted to growing and learning and loving. So it's been a journey.
Yeah. So then you discover attachment science, you delve into it passionately, and you become obsessed with Mary Ainsworth and the strange situation. I can't believe the depths of your devotion to this, but this is very important work that you brought her work into light. And before your book, I have read Robert Caron's book, Becoming Attached.
Oh, I love that book.
That's also it's a phenomenal book about the science of attachment. But you narrowed in on Mary Ainsworth and the light that she deserves, right? You gave her that. I could see myself in your writings, your obsession with this woman when I was in grad school, Mabel Smith Douglas. I was at Rutgers, and Mabel Smith Douglas was the first dean of the Women's College. And, she was a very interesting woman, a pioneer, just like Mary Ainsworth, a unique character who fought for women's rights. Women were not getting education. And I did an assignment on her research project. And just like you, I went to the archives. I was obsessed with Mabel Smith Douglas, the way you were obsessed with this woman. I was reading.
That's wonderful.
It was so interesting. You reopened that in me. I had forgotten it. It was 20 years ago. But as I read your book, I'm like, wow, I was obsessed with Mabel Smith Douglas. I was reading her letters, holding in my hands. I was in archives, in the cold archives for hours, digging up stuff because her death is mysterious, whether she committed suicide or just died in a lake. She's a phenomenal character. She was 59 when she died. They discovered her body 30 years later. Her 2 children committed suicide. I mean, very interesting woman.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. And the college and the campus is called after her, Douglas Campus, Douglas College. And I lived on Douglas Campus. So I was obsessed with this woman the way you were obsessed with Mary Ainsworth. So you reignited that with this book, something I had. What I want you to talk about is one misconception about attachment and give me one fact about attachment. I think it would be fun to do like a quick misconception and a fact, if that's possible. Because this is a huge topic. We can talk about this for hours. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I have a question. How old are your children now?
My daughter is 14. I have only one.
Oh, great. Okay. So we're in the similar boat.
We're in similar boat. Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Okay. So the most common misconception about attachment is, and I'm talking about like Dr. Sear's attachment, that kind of thing, because the whole nother adult attachment that we can get into. But the most common misconception about attachment, the first one is that attachment is a thing you do. So for instance, that there are so-called attachment parents and other parents who are not attachment parents, when in fact, we are all attachment parents. There is no other kind of parent than one who is deep in the midst of attachment. Now, we may be, creating a secure attachment or an insecure attachment, but we're attaching and our kids are attaching to us regardless. So,
sorry, but sometimes people say that's a lack of attachment. I hear that term. I'm like, no, that's not a thing. That's not a thing.
It is not a thing. It does not exist, except for in the most severe cases of abuse and neglect. We're talking about like orphanages where children are not touched. That child perhaps is unattached, but it's not a thing. In the people we know, nobody's not attached. We can be very disorganized in our attachment, but it's a system. I mean, this is the wonderful thing about it. Like attachment is a system, and we are in response to so many of the cues and the signals in the attachment system in which we inhabit. And so, like any system, it can always be tweaked, but that's another misconception. So let me start. The first one is that it's a behavior, not a feeling. So for instance, people think like, oh, if I co-sleep, or if I, if I never, oh my gosh, sleep train. If I wear my child in a sling all the time, if I, have these very particular kind of Western style parenting vibes, I will create a secure attachment, or I'm engaging in attachment behavior, when that is absolutely untrue. That is a certain style of life. That's a lifestyle. That has nothing to do with attachment. Attachment behaviors are crying, sucking, reaching, smiling, and creeping. So like, clamoring. Those are attachment behaviors. Wearing a sling, co-sleeping, nursing, these are not. So that's one misconception. And a fact about attachment is that it has nothing to do with what you do and everything to do with how you feel. So for instance, Mary Ainsworth discovered early on in her work that the securely attached infants in her first study in Uganda some of them were breastfed, some of them were bottle fed, but what really mattered was the mother's attitude toward breastfeeding. That is profound. First of all, the fact that she thought to ask these Ugandan women how they feel about breastfeeding, when we tend to assume that every woman and every African woman in the 50s is just going to be like a natural kind of mother in this way. Mm-hmm. And she actually thought to ask these women how they feel about breastfeeding, which I think is just so beautiful. And some of them liked it and some of them didn't. Surprise, surprise. And she found that the women who enjoyed breastfeeding had more securely attached babies. So let that be a message to your listeners who think that they have to suffer through things that they don't want to do, including nursing. This is a radical thing. Now, I nursed Azalea. I loved it. It was a good thing for us. It was a good fit. I wore her in a sling. I loved it. I hate gear. I don't like strollers. I don't like things. I like to stay contained. I get really overwhelmed by all that stuff. I wore her in a sling till she was like 5 because I just didn't ever want to use a stroller. But that was because I'm really funny about that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean you're going to have a securely attached child. Another misconception is that you can take a self-measure as an adult and find out what kind of attachment you have. Now, this is the attachment styles world. we're certainly learning something about our leanings by taking these self-assessments. And it's not that it's bad or wrong, but attachment patterns are understood in the unconscious and in ways that generation after generation, we pass this down. It's so unconscious. It's not necessarily going to be revealed in a self-measurement test. The fact of the matter is, the fact about attachment is that, like I said, it is passed down generation after generation. And the adult attachment interview, which is an hour-long interview that I went through and I talk about it in my book, and is then transcribed. And you have to I went through the training and how to code it as well, but it's an incredibly complex system that is not obvious at all. And I have great respect for that. And so that's another fact about attachment. I could go on and on.
So to tell me what kind of questions are in this adult attachment interview. Do you remember any of the questions?
Oh my gosh, I remember all the questions. Yeah.
You do? Give us a couple of examples.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first question is, well, do you want to just do it with me?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Then we could do a whole podcast about this. Yeah, I do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the first question is, tell me a little bit. Well, first you do like a very basic history of like, where did you grow up and who was in your house and, that kind of thing. And then the first real question is, give me 5 adjectives to describe your relationship with your mother.
Wow. I have to think about this. I lost my mom when I was 13. So I don't even have a lot of memory. So I have to go really far.
Well, what's really interesting, and I should have said this on practice, is that it's really from 0 to 12.
Yes.
You're
yes. Yeah, I'm good. So 5 adjectives to describe my relationship with my mother. Warm.
Okay.
Warm, caring, attentive. I'm lacking on adjectives. Yeah, she was very smiley, happy, delightful. You talk about delight. I do feel that. That's the first impression.
Okay.
Curious.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know. Did I say 5?
You did. You said warm, caring, attentive, delightful, and curious.
Okay.
Does that feel
that does
good?
Yes, does that? Yeah, it does.
Good. So then could you describe, one of the adjectives you used was warm.
Yeah.
Can you think of a memory, an example when you felt your relationship with your mother was warm?
Oh yeah, I can remember a few, several things.
Okay.
I can remember, her singing bedtime songs, lying down and cuddling me and just putting me to bed, even when I was like 9 or older, telling stories, making up stories, or sitting on a couch reading this particular book about this boy who dies. Very, very grim story. And I was crying. I could remember times when I was ill one time very severely, and how she was caring for me. I can describe how that was, or I can remember another memory in the kitchen where when she was teaching me how to bake cakes, because she was a great baker, and people would, always come to her for cakes and things like that. She was very good with baking cakes, decorating them, and for occasions. She was very generous and giving. And she was teaching me how to bake, how to hold the mixer. She would give me the mixer, handheld mixer, so I would do it, and it felt very grown up, right? She trusted me to do the batter, and she was happy for me to. Now that I'm thinking this, oh my gosh, I think I'm like my mother. I get the same sense with my daughter. This was very interesting digression. I'm sorry, but like the way I am with my daughter is very similar to the way my mom was with me. She wasn't like, do it this way, hold it this way. No, that's the wrong way. She would scaffold, but be on the
That's
side.
what I do. That's what I do.
But so that's what I do with my daughter too. And it never occurred to me that I learned that from my mom. I thought it was just me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But now that you asked me about this memory, this kitchen memory came to mind, our blue kitchen and my mom in her apron and the black stove and all the details and her haircut and everything. Like I remember very vividly.
Wow. Well, in the interest of time,
yes,
I will tell you that so the adult attachment interview goes on like that, and I ask more for adjectives to describe your relationship with your father, and then ask for examples. And I can tell you right now, just from what you've said about your mother, that you sound very secure, and that is because now generally, the 5 adjectives, yours were all very positive, but they weren't positive. They were positive in like a specific way. So like attentive, delightful, curious is a very specific kind of positive. So I would guess just from the very beginning that you would skew in the secure direction, only because your adjectives are very specific, and they're generally, we would look for a little bit more mix, like a little bit of like, frustrating, a little bit more, because the secure person has a full view of the parent. Whereas the avoidant person the adjectives would be very idealized, and they wouldn't be able to come up with any examples. So you not only had incredible recall, which is another marker of a securely attached person, the ability to recall and relay attachment experiences. The avoidant person doesn't remember anything.
Oh, I can remember negative stuff, not the whole lot, but like she wasn't rageful or angry or anything like that, but she had the look. I knew like she could put me in my place with her look, but there's an incident, like I wanted to go to the movie theater with my friends. She said no. And I felt misunderstood, obviously, as a kid, and I broke something in the house. I mean, I remember that, but
well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What we're looking for in the adult attachment interview is a full experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the capacity to see one's own mind and the mind of the parent, because we are now adults. And so one of the questions that comes at the end is, do you have a sense of why your mother or your father parented the way that they did? And, you don't have to answer that right now, but that is a very important question in the adult attachment interview, because what we're looking for is reflective function. Can the person have, because this is what the attachment system is designed to help us see ourselves. And we see ourselves by our parents' capacity to see themselves. And so if you have an avoidant parent who doesn't have mindsight, who can't feel their own feelings or see their own mind, they're not going to be a mirror for you. They're not going to be able to say, I know that's really hard and I see you, and you're not going to the movies. It's a much more distancing kind of experience. And then the preoccupied adult is, the adjectives are all over the place, filled with rage, very much in the present. And then that you get examples, and the examples are a little hard to follow. They're a little disjunctive. They might be about something that happened yesterday, when we're really asking about what happened when you were 12 and before. So that's the preoccupied adult that is like still like unresolved. And unresolved is that's a technical term. It's a different thing. Unresolved for grief, but preoccupied means that it's still so much happening in your mind that you can't see it. It's just still totally active. So that's a very, very short version of the AAI.
Yeah, well, thank you. But what I loved about your book, first of all, you set up this whole thing, and the way you talk about your feelings towards your daughter, sometimes you're irritated, you're rageful, and you talk about your brothers who didn't like you, your parents, and we get the idea, oh my gosh, and you think you're a broken person, you talk about this, but then you discover that that's not the case. So can you tell me about that? Like, what was it like when you went through the experiment, not the experiment, the AI? Yes.
Oh my God. It was,
like, what were you feeling like right before the interview?
Nervous, really nervous, because my big concern was that I thought, oh my God, if I come through preoccupied, my whole book project is going to be seen as just a preoccupied obsession. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is terrifying. And I asked Dr. Steele later, because I did the AAI training with him, I asked him, what would you have done if my AAI had come back avoidant or preoccupied? And he said, well, honestly, the fact that you were so interested in this and gave me the sense that you were probably secure. Because avoidant people tend to not be interested in attachment, and preoccupied people might not be able to create such a coherent narrative around it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So you were pleasantly surprised and relieved, yes. Probably.
Oh my God, hugely. And it really gave me a sense of confidence because, and I'm someone who is very, very discerning, and I wasn't going to buy this attachment business until I went to the bottom of it and saw for myself. By the time I got to the AAI, I trusted the attachment science. And so when I got the feedback about my AAI, I trusted it. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is really exciting.
And then you took your mother to the.
Yes, I did.
It's like unbelievable. And it turned out she was securely attached too. And your whole life, I guess, your perspective on your entire life changed, right? At that moment. So many things, like you created a different personal narrative. It's so powerful, isn't it? Yeah. That shift that happens.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, it's huge. And my poor mother, she doesn't quite understand it. And she feels like she doesn't come off very well in the book. And people who have read it say, are you kidding? You're the hero. You're amazing. But she's, she gets very caught on things that I said about, like, lunches that I didn't like, or times you didn't pay attention to me. And she doesn't quite get that was just so that I could create the sense that I was wrong. But,
So what do you think then? What's the most important thing in attachment? I guess it's how we are with our kids, right? And who we are and how we are with our kids.
But it's who we are with ourselves. That's the most important part.
But then, that besides attachment, let me ask you this: besides attachment, what else is important for raising emotionally intelligent? You can have secure attachment, but a pretty messed up childhood, right?
Well, I did.
Yeah, you did, yeah. And a lot of people did. So what I want to get to is secure attachment, and like 60%, 65% of people do have secure attachments, yeah. which is surprising, because a lot of people think all their problems stem from their attachment.
Exactly.
And that is not the case. And that's what I loved about your book too, that this has nothing to do with the traumas that you endured or adversities that you went through.
Yeah.
This is a completely different marker.
Exactly. No, I'm really glad you brought that up. Yes. So attachment is considered a protectant. It's not, it's like life is suffering. We are going to suffer. and we are going to be hurt, and we are going perhaps to be abused. We are going to be oppressed. We are going to be angry. We are going to be rage-filled. We are going to move through all the realms of existence. That's, I'm a Buddhist. That's how I understand it. We're going to move through all the realms, the animal realm, the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, the God realm. And a secure attachment just helps us move through. It just helps us stay in our bodies, in our minds. It helps us trust ourselves as we go through the agony and the ecstasy of being a human being. And so I can't really speak to what else, it's so relative to what you want out of for your children, like education, money, opportunity, there's so many things. I want a world where everybody has the opportunity to feel what they feel, and that's the attachment world, is being able to feel what you feel. So do I have other interests? Of course. And do I fight for justice on other levels? Absolutely. And, I think about attachment and secure base in so many different kinds of ways, but ultimately the attachment work is really just about being able to be your own inner authority.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
Bethany, I can talk to you for hours.
Oh, the same. The feeling's mutual. It's such a pleasure.
This book is very rich, and there is in the back of the book, you have all that other research that is the additional part, which I found very fascinating. Maybe one day you'll do something with that too, but you did a lot of research, tremendous work.
I think it's good for now. Yeah.
10 years of labor. And so that's impressive. And congratulations for that. So thank you for writing this wonderful book and bringing Mary Ainsworth to the light that she deserved. You're such a champion and advocate for her, and because she was always not seen. And it's wonderful. And your obsession with her makes us, the reader, fall in love with her and with attachment and strange situation and everything. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. We'll reconnect. We'll reconnect again. I would love to have you again to talk about something else.
Well, this was really lovely, and I had a great time. And let's continue the conversation. It was really lovely to meet you.
That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you enjoyed it. Did you learn something new today? What's your biggest takeaway? Are you interested in the science of attachment? I love hearing from you. I welcome your feedback, comments, and questions always. So get in touch. Send me a note to the email info@authenticparenting.com. Call the number 732-763-2576 and leave a voicemail. And for international listeners, you can use the free SpeakPipe tool on the contact page of my website, authenticparenting.com/contact. I know you are a true fan because you're listening to the very end of this episode. You're listening to the outro. And therefore, I want to reveal a big secret. Yes, you're the first one to know that I am writing a book proposal. That's it for now. I will update you as I progress on my project. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to do. It takes a couple of seconds, but it's very helpful. Also, consider becoming a patron. With a small monthly contribution, you can support your favorite show and get supporter-only benefits, content, and exclusive access to me. Join 18 existing patrons who together contribute $89 towards our monthly goal of $500. You can find the show and follow it wherever podcasts are played: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and elsewhere. And if you want to see what I'm up to in my private life and get some inspiration and updates about the podcast, follow me on Instagram, the only social media platform that I use. Until next week, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening.